Swans, the Beggar album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this latest from experimental rock legends and one of the best bands to ever do the damn thing. Swans, the iconic experimental music act headed by the one and only Michael Gira. They have been at it since the 80s, and their discography is not an easy one to get into, but the band, while always experimental and trying something new, almost all of their albums, to an extent, have a very unique and distinct flavor, and they've reinvented themselves and tried new things so many times that if you don't like an album from them, you can always just skip that one and kind of check out the next one. But like I said, they've been at it since the 80s, putting out no-wave classics like Filth, the bulky and very industrial-sized Cop, the very harrowed and tortured Greed, the unbearably twisted Holy Money, and one of my personal favorites, the gothic-tinged Children of God. For me, at least as far as their 80s stuff goes, as they're marching into the early 90s, I thought they were just getting better and better with each release. As a matter of fact, the first couple of albums they released in the 90s are some of my personal favorite Swans projects. Like White Light from the Mouth of Infinity, I've always considered to be probably my favorite Swans album, and Love of Life may just be their most euphoric record. And you know what, I'm just going to say it, as far as The Great Annihilator goes, I mean, it's gotten probably the most praise out of every one of their albums, maybe except To Be Kind, but truthfully, it really does deserve every accolade. The Great Annihilator is unbelievable. Now, don't hate me, but there was a short period of time where I just was not as into Swans output as much as every other person I feel like who was. Like, take for example, Soundtracks for the Blind. I get it. As a man who loves himself some dark ambient, this album is a masterclass, but it is also a pretty challenging record, and I don't always have time to listen to the whole thing, even though it is a pretty freaking stunning at points, and we wouldn't hear from Swans for quite a bit after its release. Yes, My Father Will Guide Me Up a Rope to the Sky in the early 2010s, which, certainly had some great things going on there, but at the same time, I just felt like there was a lot of room to grow. I felt like Michael Gira, was still revving up that Swans engine again. I thought there were some great ideas. I just needed to hear a lot more of it, but, after that, they released The Seer, which I've enjoyed since day one, and if you haven't listened to Be Kind, you're really doing yourself a disservice. Now, The Glowing Man is fine, but of the, The Seer and To Be Kind trilogy, I thought it was very easily the weakest of the three, even though it had some really great stuff on there. And their last album, Leaving Meaning, yeah, it had, once again, some genuinely good stuff on there, but at the end of the day, the album just had me craving a lot more. I was ready for the next Swans rebirth, and leading up to this album, I was actually kind of worried because some of the tracks that they were dropping, I thought, just standalone wise, were not hitting me personally, but I know at the end of the day, it's about the album, it's about the experience, it's about sitting through it, and yes, this review is a day or so late, but this is a 2-hour plus album, and I wanted to give it the justice. And you know what? Most of this album shows that Swans still have a lot of gas left in their tank. Los Angeles City of Death, for example. Leading up to this album, this was the one track that really gave me some hope. I love the driving force behind this track, even if it is, by Swan standards, a very short one. It packs a lot of intensity and drama into only 3.5 or so minutes, which, for Swan standards, once again, that's pretty shocking. But it's tense, it's monolithic, it's pensive, and it has a hell of a performance from Michael Gira. While incredibly short, I think it does a great job of fitting everything that Swans has been known for into a few short minutes. Michael is done, on the other hand. This track is just where I want to hear the band in 2023. This is a massive, heavy track that is just hitting on all cylinders, baby. I hope you like Tension, because this track has it in spades. My God, this instrumental is, it's something. I love how twinkling and shimmering it comes off. It actually has a heavy dose of like a heavy fantasy feel to it, but it also has this euphoric sense to it, a sort of glimmering hope, which I'm not really used to on a Swans record as well, but it's done really tastefully. And between the swelling instrumental and just how triumphant this track comes off, it's beautiful. The choir vocals, the monolithic sound, I struggle to find many better tracks than this here. With Unforming, the very kaleidoscopic sounds of this album continue. I mean, it still has plenty of very eerie, twisted undertones, but it's a lot brighter. And it is absolutely stunningly beautiful, and it only continues to get more beautiful as each instrumental pops in. And just like so many other great Swans moments, you really do have to sit with it and be patient, but your patience is rewarded. This album's title track, The Beggar, this is home to me, my friends. This is a very tense, very grisly track that just starts building from the word go. Does not waste a single second. It is a pretty stark comparison compared to other tracks on this album. I mean, Michael Gira on this track sounds absolutely dangerous. Chilling as well. This is a hell of a title track. All 10 minutes of it, I really wouldn't change much. The pacing, the atmosphere, everything is right where it should be. Everything has its purpose. I feel at home. It's a very uneasy, intense home, but it's home nonetheless. And No More of This is another very meditative, very slow-paced track that once again is actually pretty euphoric. Blissful even, and that is despite the very dark lyrical presence on this track. There's a shocking sense of finality to this track as well, and just after how tense the title track was, it's very blissful. And when the rest of this instrumental comes crashing in eventually, it's thrilling, man. Ebbing took a couple of listens as well, but I'm still pretty shocked at how just kaleidoscopic this album is. And you know what? Some people may not be into the group vocals on this track and the less crushing vibes. But at the moment, I'm pretty impressed with what they are doing. And I'm even more impressed halfway through this track when it just becomes this blended, colorful mess of neo-psych. It's pretty damn ambitious, even for Swans at this point. However, I will say this, and this is a very good album from Swans, but this is another 2-hour plus album from the band, and there's a couple of tracks that just did not need to be here. Like The Parasite, I am just not really vibing on this track, not really. I mean, on the plus side, it is certainly as freaky as you would expect from a Swans track. All the usual elements are right on display, and there's nothing wrong with them. But for me, as dark and twisted as this is, I'm not as enamored with it. I feel like they've just come out with much more denser and more monolithic work in the past, and there's just so many more rewarding tracks on this album. It just doesn't really end up ending anywhere nearly as interesting as some of the other tracks on this album. There's so many better performances. And I have a lot of the same feelings on Paradise Is Mine. Leading up to this album, this track was a major turnoff for me. And honestly, my thoughts haven't changed that much. Yeah, sure, they lock in on that very hypnotic groove. It is a Swans track. And it's not like Michael Gira sounds bad on this track either. He's not really the problem. It's everything else around him. I just struggle to feel like this track ends somewhere interesting. I mean, if you're a Swans fan, or, you will know that patience is key, and wherever a track ends up at the end of the day, it's something very special and something to sit with and something to really feel. But I don't get that from this track. There's no payoff, sadly. It's just not really the kind of Swans track that I show up for. And why can't I have what I want anytime that I want? I mean, this late in the album track, it gives me a lot of the same vibes. I mean, the tension is certainly alive and well here. But once again, the payoff is not here, for me at least. All the classic elements are right here. You may adore this track, but this 7+ minute slogfest just has no leg to stand on. I just feel like there's so many more interesting ideas on this album. I think it's the weakest track here. Oh, but hey, Swans aren't done with us just yet. No, they're really not done with us, because there is a second disc to this album that runs about 56 minutes long, including a 45-minute extension of the title track. That's right, The Beggar Lover 3 kicks off disc 2. There's only 2 tracks on it. But honestly, from the word go with this track, I am absolutely thrilled. The hype is so real. The amount of drama on this track, the density of this track. Once again, every instrumental on this track has a purpose. Between the winding instrumental, the instruments that just pop in out of freaking nowhere and pop out like nothing even happened, and this incredibly, unbearably tense and harrowing spoken word performance on this track. This is what I'm talking about. The tension. It is so easy to get lost in this. 16 minutes in, this groove is freaking locked in, man. It is tense, it is pensive, it is gritty. It's awesome, and the second half of this track is even more tense between this ridiculously paced drumming and the repeated vocal snippets of children saying nursery rhymes like, yeah. I'm just going to say it. Not too many bands can make a 44-minute track this accessible, but honestly, it's one of the easiest tracks to listen to here. It is absolutely a joy. I mean, I think it's a masterpiece, honestly. And no, it's not going to be for everyone. It's a tough ride, but man, is it worth it. And the Memorious, which ends off this album, is probably one of the most instantaneous and accessible tracks here. But the direct riff that we get here, Michael Gira's performance, which is bizarre by his standards, and the very twisted children's voices once again, make this 9-minute monster pretty easy to take in. And by the end of it, it turns into one of the most hypnotic and methodical tracks here. And that's saying something. And you know what? I really do think it's the perfect finale for this album. It really does take, just about every sound that Swans has worked with on this album and wraps it up real nice for a very solid finale. This is a very good album from Swans. I don't think that this is going to go down as one of their best albums. I don't even think this stands up to The Seer and To Be Kind and stuff like that. Like, there are some misdirects here. Some of, sadly, the first couple of tracks here, and a late one as well, really do get me out of that Swans groove that I was in. But overall, the band still has so much to offer, and there's so many truly great, euphoric, hypnotic, and mesmerizing moments on this album. I'm feeling a strong 7 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.